So, actually, we're talking churches and artist development.
Yeah.
First of all, what is artist development?
Artist development is basically the process of identifying the strengths and weaknesses of an artist. So some artists, in this present disposition or dispensation that we live in, a lot of people feel like the moment you can sing, you're an artist. The moment you can write, we can train you to sing and you become an artist. Or the moment you can perform, then we can train you to become an artist. Sometimes it works. Say for example, the band is not the most talented artist vocally, but he can perform. He's an all-round act, right? Or say someone like Feruzi is a great songwriter. He's also a good singer, but sometimes a lot of people might say, oh, it's just a great songwriter. Maybe songwriter is the first thing that some people discovered about him. And some people can sing, but it doesn't mean they can perform all right. So the process of artist development is to create this awesome artist. So it's the process of engineering the vocal, giving them vocal trainings, understanding how they can improve their self via stage performances, like improving their stage craft basically, and giving them everything they need to become this rounded artist. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, well, what are the roles churches have played? Some examples of artists that you think churches have like developed as artists.
It's not even about that basically. It's about the fact that in the old days, for example, a lot of artists, like before, a significant amount of Nigerian artists between 1995 and 2000, that people that believe 1995 and 2010, most of them were, if you were a Christian, that means you went to church, that means you were part of a choir. Name them. A lot of them did that. And even if you didn't do that, the streets will teach you, the streets and the hustle phase will teach you artist development. But the most interesting thing about church is this. Churches don't even realize that what they are doing is artist development. The only thing that they are thinking is we want to create these members of our choir and want them to be good artists, we want them to be disciplined, we want them to be disciplined, we want them to be able to do certain things when we call on them. What do these churches do? These churches don't realize that churches basically, before you get transition from the teenage choir to the adult choir, they will make sure you are good vocally. They make sure that you can perform. They make sure that you can that you are disciplined. A lot of artists these days don't even have the regimen and the routine to have the discipline to become artists. That's why a lot of people who are talented can't sustain success. But in church, they will test your vocals. They will teach you how to perform. For example, even though you don't know how to perform, they will just throw you in front of the audience one day and tell you to perform and start leading praise and worship. If you don't do that, they will tell you to come to choir practice every day. That's routine. By the time you realize it, they will then tell you, oh, this is the type, this is your type, this is your vocal strengths. These are the songs that you can perform on. They will tell you that to perform hymns, to perform praise and worship, to go high key, to go low key. Those are vocal exercises. That's how great artists are formed. Like in advanced climbs, right? In advanced climbs, before you get signed to certain labels and before you become certain artists, now everything has been abridged because people just want to find young artists that can thrill a crowd or people who are even influencers. That's why you see TikTok people on TikTok. Charlie D'Amelio's sister is basically an artist these days. That's why you see some of those things happening because everybody just wants to make money. But in the old days, you will see Big Sean, for example, met Kanye West at 17, signed his first record deal at 20, released his first project at 23. That's 6 years. You see Jonas Brothers, for example, those guys, before they became artists, the guy that signed them made sure they could play instruments, like intense. You will see, Adu Mekuri was telling me about Chocolate City at the start, about how people like MI, he made sure that MI, Ice Prince, Jesse Jags, before they were signed, all of them, like MI might have overseen a significant amount of artist development for Ice Prince and Jesse Jags, but he did that one for Ice Prince and made sure that they proved that they could become artists. The point in essence is that churches, what these people were doing at the time, churches were doing it free of charge. And they didn't even realize that was what they were doing. Like before you realize it, by the time these artists come out in the crowd, they are fully formed. Look at Mercy Chinwo. Mercy Chinwo can sing for the next 50. Name any gospel artists in Nigeria. If you go to Experience at TBS, you will see people who have rounded artists. They can sing, they can shout, they can perform, they can shriek, they can do anything. If you go to Nigeria, DJ Track One is a thing with pop stars in Nigeria. DJ Track One, you will go to, some people will even be there, they will be going off key while they are there. They can't do anything. It's even It's funny sometimes. We don't want to mention names here. But you go to experience, for example, you will see 10 artists. They are there, they are trailing you for the next 72 hours. It's amazing.
Are there any, which churches, like an example of the churches that has a good record of developing artists?
Most churches actually do. But the churches that we can mention off the top of our heads right now, we talk Equa, fantastic choir. We talk Apostolic Faith, fantastic choir development program, fantastic choir program. We talk about Christ Embassy. If you want to talk about contemporary Nigerian gospel stars, Christ Embassy, it doesn't get bigger than that. Sinach, Adaehi, all of them. It's a whole bed of artists. Then we're going to talk about white garment churches. A lot of people don't realize what white garment churches do. They can be very funny, but by the time they are teaching you endurance training, you are performing in the choir for 72 hours. You are saying hello, hello for like 6 hours. Don't worry, they will call you on stage. You perform on top for the next 3 months, and you won't even get tired. It's interesting, basically.
And then the record label that does this, like in terms of like normal record label.
Yeah, some record labels actually do. Let's talk about Maven, for example, off the top. Before we get there, in the past, it used to be a thing. Like I was saying the other time, in the past, artist development used to be a thing. A Kenneth Music, for example, or so the old record labels, Kenneth, say, EME, some of these other labels, they would make sure that an artist was ready to go out before the artist was ready to go out. If you are not ready, then that means you are not going anywhere. Because they want to ascertain that the streets either the church has taught you that, or the streets must have taught you that, or the also face must have taught you artist development. You must have performed at numerous events for you to learn stage, for your stagecraft to be astute. You must have performed at different places and trained your vocals for your vocals to be fantastic. It's like a footballer. Tough times make footballers better. Artists too. Tough times strengthen them. So that's why the also phase and the streets are important. So right now, the label that does it the most in Nigeria now, even maybe the only label that does in Nigeria now, is Maven. Everybody else, they don't even care. They don't realize, they don't even want to think about it. Because why? The reality of music now, everything has become real time. We are ready now, we want to go. Like a lot of artists, and the Nigerian music ecosystem these days is also funded by a lot of dirty money, by a lot of people who are rich, who just want to sign artists and make money off artists. They don't understand the concept of artist development. The moment they see you and that you can make music, they are basically signing you. They are putting you on the record deal. They are putting you here. They are rolling you out as an artist. You don't even have to be ready. A ton of Nigerian artists, the moment you see them, you'll be like, why is someone putting this person out there? So the idea that, even like I said the other time, social media following is one of the reasons why people can put you out, because they know that the moment you release your music, people are going to listen. It's a lot of ignorance, it's a lot of assumption, and it's a lot of problems that are facing. But in terms of labels that do it, Maven. When Maven rolls as an artist, the first thing you are going to hear is Maven activated. A ton of artists are still in development on that Maven. It's incredible what they're doing. Shout out to them.
Why is this artist development thing not a focal point of Nigerian music culture?
Like I said the other time, ignorance. There's a lot of ignorance. Number one is ignorance. A lot of people don't even realize what artist development is. Ignorance that is fed by assumption. People think that the moment you can do this, then it means you can do this. The moment you have this, then that means you have that. The moment you can sing, it means you can perform. Impatience, and all of them are interlinked. Everything interlinked. Without ignorance, you will not assume anything. Without assumption, you are not going to be impatient. You are going to assume the person is ready, and then you are going to get impatient that, man, I want to make money. I've expended money on this person. No, I have to make my own money. The moment we can take that out of it, a lot of Nigerian artists are going to understand what artist development is. There will not be a lot of, oh, I think you can sing, then you can be able to perform. Look at Wizkid, for example. The entire tenet of Wizkid's development is a fantastic blueprint in terms of not just artist development, but also rollout. The way Wizkid himself, he has been formed by the streets. Like when I was talking about some people go through it in church, some people go through it while being on the streets and doing their house affairs. Wizkid had done it on the streets. It was a studio rat. People knew him in Surulere. Aside from OJB Jezreel, the person that took him to Banki was Niola. When Niola found him, he was hustling. He was a rapper. Then he started singing. He had released certain songs under Young Prince. A lot of people didn't know him at the time. Until he appeared on MI's Fast Money Fast Cars, people didn't realize who he was. By the time he got to hear me, the way they branded that guy, his vocals, he was not exactly the best performer at the time. But by the time they took him and they rolled him out as an artist, the way they trained his vocals, even though as he was getting older, the soprano in his voice was getting thinner, it was getting thick, it was becoming slightly more tenor-ish. They still found a way to make it work. Now you look at him these days. Wizkid might not exactly be the most talented in his generation, but is he the most accomplished? Absolutely. He knows how to play into his strengths. He knows how to do, like Made in Lagos played into his strengths as an artist. A lot of people would have tried to experiment with other things. He did not. He stuck with his strengths. And guess what? Success. And that's fact on him.